Welcome back to the Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage. Need a mortgage that fits your life? Rocket can.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Our next guest is one of the best reporters in the NFL. He covers the Houston Texans and the NFL up close. He is Aaron Wilson, and he joins us right now on our progressive guest line. Aaron, as always, appreciate the time, my man. How you been?
Doing great, Jake. How are you?
Hanging in. So training camp's coming up, of course, locally in Houston. The big story, whether or not Deshaun Watson even shows up to training camp. Aaron, based on what you heard, what are the chances Watson even reports to training camp for the July 27 start date?
Right. I'd say it's unresolved at the moment because the NFL needs to give some clarity on, are they going to do commissioner's exempt list? If he does acquire fines at $50,000 per day, that obviously wouldn't have to be paid until it comes out of game checks. If he's been on exempt list, it could be deducted from that amount. But I think that, at some point the league will weigh in here. But this isn't necessarily, even though it's a preoccupation for a lot of media and fans and it has impact the Texans, it's not necessarily a hot button issue for them. It's procedural, and at some point it'll be taken care of. But I don't think it's the biggest story that people make it to be. In my opinion, because he's asked for the trade, doesn't want to play for them anymore, and there's no reconciliation, there's nowhere to really go with this. So it's just a matter of the same pattern that we talked about, resolving the 22 civil lawsuits in some way or another, which right now they're not at the point where they're going to be a settlement. He's not being depoted until February of 2022. And then it's tough for the league to have a lot of movement on this because they want to see, what's the resolution before they, levy punishment or don't. And then that all affects his value. For Nick Caserio, who's going to ask for, not a 25% type of return. He wants, a good return on Deshaun Watson. So, it's a very complicated matter, and it's just still, a lot of things that have to happen before you can get to what most people care about, which is, what's the trade and what's the value? And yeah, he is not back down from his trade requests, and there's no change there. So yeah, it really is still a holding pattern.
Aaron, do you think it's fair to both Watson and the Texans that the NFL still has not yet decided whether or not they're going to put him on this exempt list before training camp?
I don't think that it's unfair in the sense that they normally take their time. So he's being treated in a similar manner to other players that have been, his is somewhat unprecedented, but there have been other situations where they don't do commissioner's exempt in a speedy manner. There was a situation with Adrian Peterson, and that was with the child abuse case that was actually here in Texas, where the Vikings sought guidance on the matter and asked for him to be placed on that list. And then the NFL complied. So, there's some precedent. Maybe the Texans could do that at some point. But right now, the ball really is in the NFL's court.
So say they don't put him on the exempt list and Watson shows up, hypothetically. Would they let him practice, or is the relationship so, fractured at this point where the Texans might just tell him, hey, just go away from now and we'll wait for the situation to resolve itself so we eventually can move him?
I don't think it'll be a gate crasher at their training camp party. And I think that a conversation would be had. I think that scenario, and I see a lot of people on social media talking about that just does not seem realistic to me at all. That he just, hey, I'm here. And then they have to tell him, no, you're excused. And yeah, I just don't see that. But stranger things have happened in this league. So that would be one of the strangest.
Aaron Wilson joining us here. You can follow him on Twitter at @Aaron_Wilson_NFL. He covers the Texans and the NFL. If you look at just from a Watson standpoint here, I quite frankly, Aaron, I don't understand why he wouldn't want to at least show up, because if the Texans tell him to go away or the NFL then puts him on the exempt list, he could get paid. If he chooses not to show up, you already outlined the potential fines and the lack of compensation that he would no longer be owed by the team. I have to imagine his legal fees are running quite a tab here. Why wouldn't you show up if you're Deshaun Watson, just so you at least get paid?
I don't think that I know that it's expensive and everyone, $50,000 per day is a lot of money, but, he has, as you said, he's paid $1 million retainer for Rusty Harden, and then, you go through that and the tab keeps running. He's a very expensive attorney. At the same time, Deshaun is not someone that's, in any kind of financial dire straits. He has plenty of money. He's, gotten the big contract. That included a $27 million bonus. He had, the rookie money, and he had a bunch of off-field money. And just because he doesn't have those endorsements doesn't mean he didn't already earn a lot of it. And he also owns restaurants. So I would say people probably are overthinking it when they think about the financial element of it, like, what about this $1.5 million, $2 million type of thing? And he's going to make $35 million in 2022 if he plays every game. That's his salary that he's scheduled for. But yeah, I don't think this is going to be really what people are expecting, which is, a very dramatic situation of, like Deshaun walking up and then David Kelly saying, "Hey, sorry, you gotta go home." No, there's a reason why they've signed all these quarterbacks. They've moved on as an organization. They won't even discuss him during press conferences. So yeah, it's nothing. No offense to him. It's just what the situation is, and they're respecting his trade request. In essence, they're taking him at his word. He said he doesn't want to be here, and they believe him. They know he's sincere about that.
When could they actually trade him? Would they pull the trigger this summer, or would they have to just wait, you think, until the NFL decides whether or not they're going to give him any sort of suspension?
You would need, if you're the Texans, that assurance, and so would the other trade partner. And the problem is the NFL is not going to tell you that. They're going to say, "Hey, this is an active matter. We're not going to give you inside information," or wink, wink, nod, nod. That's just not how it works. So Lisa Frile, who's the investigator for this, she's former Manhattan sex crimes prosecutor. She's jumped on this case right away, got in touch with Tony Busby, the plaintiff's attorney. She's talked to witnesses, and she's going to want all the information before she makes a recommendation to Roger Goodell. Then Roger Goodell is the one that decides on punishment, and that can be appealed. I just don't foresee the NFL being like, "Yeah, all good." At the same time, and just pointing this out, there's been no, video, no audio. These are he said, she said situations. It's a very serious matter. It's very sensitive allegations, but there is no what the NFL would prefer in these type of matters, like a video, like the Ray Rice case, things like that. And, criminal matters, at this point, HPD has said it's an active investigation. Haven't done anything as far as, recommending charges. And if they never charge him and he's just facing civil, then that's kind of unprecedented, where you're facing, a punishment based off civil lawsuits. In Ezekiel Elliott's case, he was investigated criminally. He was never charged. He still did a 6-game suspension because Frile was of the belief that he had committed domestic violence. In the NFL, they accepted her recommendation, and that's what he did. He did 6 games. So, it's a different type of case: domestic violence, sexual assault, allegations. Ben Roethlisberger, he wound up eventually serving the 4 games, and after it was negotiated down by his attorney David Cornwell. And I think you look back at precedents, and you're not looking at commissioners exempt. Hopefully for him and the Texans, and just probably for everybody, a really worst case scenario, Jake, is commissioners exempt while the cases are being settled, then settled in 2022, then punished in 2022. In some, I don't know how many games, but so then you're basically, even though commissioners exempt is abused punishment, you've missed a year and a half or year and change of football. And that's an awful scenario for him in the prime of his career, but it's a possibility. And I think everybody's got to be realistic and say that could happen. That's possible. That's the way the NFL could go. I'm not saying that they will do that, but I just don't know if he's going to play this year. It's something that is very up in the air, and it wouldn't surprise me one way or another. Nothing in this case has been normal. Just the fact that he's in this situation, is crazy, but it's where we are.
Aaron Wilson with us here. Finally, Aaron, as far as the other quarterback options for the team, it's not going to be Deshaun Watson most likely, but they have Tyrod Taylor, who's the starter, and they drafted Davis Mills in the third round using their first pick of the draft because they did not have a first or a second round pick on the quarterback out of Stanford. Ultimately, do you think we see a lot of Davis Mills this year? Because if they're not going to play Deshaun Watson, and you could be looking at a team that's picking in the top 3 of the draft next year, you probably want to find out what you have in Davis Mills, right?
I don't know that they'll rush Davis Mills onto the field. I think they're going to see how Tyrod Taylor does, and they're going to be, really cognizant of the fact, that you don't put Davis in before he's ready. And he only played 11 games in college. So I think they're going to be, conservative with his development and how they handle that. And they're going to try to win as many games as possible. They're not tanking here. I was talking with an NFL head coach yesterday, and he said he thinks the Texans are going to be a lot more competitive than people believe. And I thought it was interesting to hear that perspective. But yeah, there are some out there that look at their roster and they look at it differently, guys that work in the NFL, than say analysts or media. I thought it was interesting to hear that. It's not the first person that said that to me this summer that, is actually like a coach or a general manager and has that perspective.
And that perspective is because they think that the roster is better. Culley's a better coach. Do people give him credit for? What's the main reason why
they
people think
that
they're
the
better?
They think the roster is better than people think. That there are some players here, that there's some talent, and that was just a couple of opinions from actually some really good coaches and GMs from successful teams, and that was their opinion. That was interesting that they thought that was having a casual conversation, but that when the Texans came up, they thought they might not be that bad. They might be competitive in a lot of games. The Tyrod's ability to avoid turnovers was mentioned. Some of their improvements on defense that they still need a corner, but they have done a few things. We'll see. I mean, I don't like to do this whole thing where you project it on paper. You got to see it, and that's when we'll know. But yeah, there's been a lot of people saying they're going to win one game or no games. I think that's kind of crazy. I think they'll do a lot better than that. But we'll see. What does that equate to? I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller, but I just thought that was interesting to hear that from some people. And I don't think they're going to rush Davis Mills onto the field at all. I think eventually, he'll play at some point during the rookie year, but I couldn't predict when that's going to be.
Aaron, great stuff. Thanks as always for joining us. Great insight on the team. We'll talk soon.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Aaron Wilson, Houston Texans reporter, joining us there, giving us the latest with Deshaun Watson and the fact that a couple people around the league think the Texans might not be as bad as everyone says they're going to be. More NFL talk and much more coming up next. Jake Asman with you here on a Tuesday. This is the Jake Asman Show on Sports Map Radio.